Hello and welcome to CCNA Part 2, Switching, Routing and Wireless Essentials. Thank you for purchasing this course from me, and especially big thanks goes to all students who have purchased CCNA Part 1 and you are continuing your learning journey with me. You know a great teacher when you meet one, yeah? Anyway, just want to remind you that if you are not sure with any of the topics that we cover here or you want more clarifications with anything, just send me an email. I will reply to you as soon as possible. Now, CCNA Part 2 is very exciting. There's a lot of practical work, lots of demonstrations here. So please download your packet tracer, which you should already have if you cover CCNA Part 1, or any other means because you need to practice yourself all the demonstrations that I do here. Anyway, I want to remind you that don't rush your learning. Take it easy, slow down. It's better spending a bit more time to learn the topic properly than just rushing it through it. My recommendation will be maybe 1 or 2 chapters a week. Slow down in your learning. Anyway, enough chatting. Let's start in our CCNA 2 journey because we have so many topics to go through. So we start with chapter 1, basic device configuration. 1.1, basic switch configuration. Router switch boot up process. So after a Cisco router or switch is powered on, it will go through boot up sequence that we should be familiar with before we take the exam. But before we look at the boot sequence, let's look at some internal components that we should be familiar with. For example, the first component that we should know is called ROM, and that stands for read-only memory. ROM is a type of memory that is non-volatile. That means that if the device is powered off, accidentally or in purpose you switch it off, all the content they stored in ROM will be retained there, which means that we don't lose the data. That's it. Another type of memory we have is flash, and in flash is, think of it as a storage, yeah, like a solid state drive. We're gonna store there. And we have operating system. Now Cisco calls this Cisco Inter-Network Operating System. But Flash, think of it as storage. Yeah, you can store anything you want in Flash, but operating system is going to be there. Another type of memory we have is NVRAM, non-volatile RAM, and in there we have startup configuration. NVRAM, like the name says, is non-volatile as well. Another type of memory is RAM, random access memory. Now, random access memory is volatile. That means that any data they store in RAM, if the device is powered off or accidentally loses power, any content they stored in RAM, it will be erased. It will be deleted. Okay, so in ROM we have a POS, so power on self-test. Now power on self-test is basic diagnostic software, just to make sure that all components are there, are ready to function. Now pretty much every electronic device will run POS, just to make sure that everything is there. Even your TV or PlayStation, Xbox, or even the washing machine has a POS, power on self-test. After the POS is finished, now this is the boot up sequence. After the POS is finished, then it's going to be the bootloader is going to be loaded. Yeah. Now bootloader, what it's going to do is going to initialize the CPU, initialize the RAM, it's going to be mapped, and it's going to initialize the flash. And in flash, it's going to look, the bootloader, it will look the first operating system. If it's not configured, if it's got no configuration, it will load the first operating system into RAM. So it will take it from flash and it will take it to RAM. Now, once that's loaded into RAM, it's called running iOS. Yeah, running iOS. Now, flash, you can have more than one iOS. For example, we can have 15.0 iOS. If our flash is big enough, can store more than one, 15.1, 15.2, and so on. The iOS could also be stored in TFTP server. Now we need to tell the bootloader which iOS to boot, right? If we choose to boot iOS 15.2, we need to actually have a configuration that says boot iOS 15.2, and that's what it's going to take. After the iOS is booted, it's loaded into RAM, then it will be handed over to operating system, and then the operating system will load the startup configuration file. That could be located on NVRAM, TFTP server, or the console. For example, if there is no startup configuration file, we will enter the startup or wizard, the configuration wizard. Now in NVRAM, for example, it's called a startup config, start up config, and then once we load it into RAM, it's called running config. Running config. Now, in RAM, other stuff that we're going to find in RAM is a routing table, for example. There's going to be ARP tables and so on. Okay, now, so the bootloader will look at the flash and it will load the first iOS. If there's no configuration, it will load first iOS. Now in Flash, you could have more than one iOS. For example, as you can see here, 15.1, 15.2, 15.3. We can tell the bootloader with a command what iOS to load. For example, boot system flash, and then choose what iOS I want to load. I can load the first one, I can load the third one. Once the iOS is loaded into RAM, you can see it's called running iOS. And then the iOS is in charge. iOS will load the startup configuration file, which is also stored in Flash, and is going to be called config.txt. And that's going to be loaded into RAM, and then it's going to be called running configuration. So for example, if sometimes we lose or we forget the password is going to be stored here. So as long as we delete or change this startup configuration file, we will have access. One of the lessons on this chapter, I'll demonstrate how to recover from forgotten passwords. Okay, so the next thing what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start a packet tracer, and we're going to look what iOS do we have on our switch. So let me just fix this packet tracer nicely so we can see everything correctly. And there we go. What I'm going to use is 2960 switch. I'm going to bring that on here and just start this. Well, it's already starting. And I will access the flash, right? Enable, and then show flash, just to see what's in the flash memory. So we can see that in the flash we have one operating system. That's it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring another operating system and then tell the bootloader to boot the other operating system. If I do show version here, it will tell me, for example, what operating system I'm running. So you can see the version 12.2, right? And that's the image as well we have. So 12.2. Maybe I want to have something bigger or better with more features and so on, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually configure this switch with an IP address. So we're going to give, for example, an SVI, switch virtual interface, so we can access the switch. And then let's give an IP address 10.1.1.2 with /24. That's IP address. And I will use on Packet Tracer, you can bring a server that we can transport, or we can download another operating system that we want to use on the switch. Yeah. Okay. So this server, we're going to give an IP address, for example, 10.1.1.5 /24. Now, I am going to connect this server with the switch. So fast Ethernet on the switch, on the server, 24 port on the switch. So if I go to the server and go to services, if you don't see this services tab, then you have to go to options and then preferences, and then look what is hidden and what is allowed. So hide, I can hide, for example, services tab could be hidden like that. And if it's services tab hidden, then I don't see the services. But if I don't see the services, just go to preferences, hide, unhide the service tab. There we go. And now if I access again my server, it's opening the other page. There we go. Services, we see it now. Okay. So on the TFTP of this server, we have an operating system 2960 15.0, and that's the one that I do actually want to use, right? But before I do that, let's go and configure it. So with an IP address, desktop, IP address 10.1.1.5 and /24 the subnet mask, and let's use 10.1.1 as a gateway. Now on the switch, I'm gonna go and configure it with an IP address. So sorry, it's gonna be in the virtual switch virtual interface. So interface, say VLAN VLAN 1 description, We always have to put description. So we don't have to, but it's important that we do, right? SVI, switch SVI management interface. Whatever, you put it something in the description, doesn't matter, but it's something descriptive anyway. And then IP address, we do 10, 10.1.1.2, and then no shutdown. Okay. Now you can see the layer 1 and layer 2 of that interface is gone up, so I should be able to ping. So let me just change the name, yeah? So host name SW1. And I should be able to ping the server. So ping 10.1.1.5. First packet will be lost, and you should know that why, because of ARP, Address Resolution Protocol, but the rest of the packets are fine. We can access them, right? So what we want to do, we want to actually copy this operating system. So if I go back to the switch, go to the TFTP service, and then just click here, and I just Control C to copy the name, yeah? So I don't have to worry about Control C to copy, and then I go back to the switch, right? So let me go back to the switch and say copy flash, copy TFTP, so TFTP to flash, right? And the address of TFTP server is 10.1.1.5, and the file name, if I paste it now, it should be in the memory. There we go. And then just press enter. And destination file name, where you want to put it, do you want to change something? Nope, just keep it the same. Now you can see it's already copied. I have already copied. So if I say show flash now, you can see I have two files. I have two operating systems. I have the one that was already there before, and I have the new one that I already got there. So I can tell the bootloader which operating system to boot from. So the command will be in the global configuration mode, boot system, and then flash, and then the file, the name of the operating system. Yeah. So I'm just going to copy that, copy and paste. Right. Let's just verify at the moment. If I do show version, let's see what version we have. Show version. What operating system? 12.2. So now if I go to the switch and for example, I will reload the switch. So say reload. Yes, I want to save it, confirm that. And now when it's going to reload, it's going to actually load a new operating system. As you can see here, right away it says load in flash 2960 LAN base K9 15.0, yeah? That's a bit longer than the other operating system. Right. Okay, it's loaded, so we can go and check it. So if I go enable and then do show version, you can see now the version is 15.0 rather than before it was 12.2 or something like that, right? So now we can see that we have two versions. So if I say show flash, we can see that we have two operating systems there. We have LAN base and LAN base K9 15.0 at 12.2. Now we have a new file as well, config.txt. Now this file, for example, this is in here we store the startup. So here I have the startup config, and here I have two operating systems, and I'll tell with the command boot system flash in the global config. Yeah, so you have to be in the global config here, and you tell boot system flash, and then what operating system you want to boot, and then that operating system will boot it. Okay, excellent. Now that's what we did. So bootloader, we tell what operating system, and now to clear the switch, now to factory reset the switch, you need to delete the VLAN.dat, because if you have a VLAN database, then you need to delete that. You need to erase the startup configuration mode, and then you can reload. That will reset it to factory reset it. And you have to be on the privilege mode to be able to do all these commands. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do actually. Just go to our switch. The thing is, when we do this stuff, it will be deleted. The config.txt will be deleted, but not the operating systems. Yeah. So when we factory reset, we are not actually deleting operating system. So we say delete vlan.dat, right? Confirm that. And at the moment, because we don't have any VLANs, and later on we're going to learn that we're going to make our VLANs, we don't have any VLANs. So that's why, because there was no VLAN.dat here, right? And then we can say, for example, erase startup config, right? And then reload. That's going to factory reset our switch. And you can see it's already the boot, we're not deleting the system boot, yeah? So the bootloader is still loading the new operating system. Okay, we did actually configure the switch for the management. I'm not going to do this configuration, but we had, for example, that's the IP address we give to the switch virtual interface, and then we can manage the switch from the devices. So this was our server, but the address we gave a 5 in the end, and we downloaded the operating system from the server to the switch, and we made sure that we can ping it. We can actually manage the switch from that server or from the PC as long as it has an IP address. If we want our switch to be actually, for example, managed from remote device, say that we want to manage it from this PC here, then the switch needs to have a default gateway. For it to be able to send packets outside, it needs to have a default gateway. So that configuration has to be done on the switch on the global configuration mode. So if I just access the switch and type enable and config t host name, let's just change again to SW1 here, the host name. And in here we say IP default gateway 10.1.1.1. No subnet mask, just the IP address. Press enter and that's it. And we do copy running config to start our config to make sure that if we device is powered off, we have the configuration there on our flash. So show flash, this is our configuration. Startup configuration is stored here, yeah? Here. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check what is the LEDs. Now, when you think about LEDs, this is more about the exam really, then we'll come up with the questions, but you have to use your common sense a little bit here, yeah? So if, for example, green, it's good. Amber, it's something to do bad or something we are, for example, no, packets are not going through it. Or maybe when there's no power, if there's no lights, there's no power. So that's, for example, for system LEDs, what we have here. That's system LED. Now system LED, if it's green, it's good. It's operating as it should. If it's off, if you don't see anything here, then there is no power. Or amber, the system is receiving power, but it's not functioning properly. And then we have a redundant power supply. Redundant power supply, this could be used, for example, if you want to have making sure that the switch will continuously have power if the main power supply fails, for example. If it's off, if you don't see anything here, then the redundant power supply is not connected. If it's green, it's power supply, redundant power supply is ready and to go. It's connected. Blinking green, it is connected, but it is providing power to somebody else. Amber, it's in standby mode or it's in fault condition. Blinking amber, if it starts blinking, then the power supply has actually failed and can't provide the redundant power supply. Then we have a port status LEDs. Green, a link is present. Off, the link is not present, for example, or administratively down. If it's, for example, blinking, that means there's activity. Then we have a duplex. So we have a status, port status. Then we have a duplex. Duplex port is, for example, if it's off, if you don't see anything here, the device is operating half duplex. If it's green, the device is operating at full duplex. Then we have a port speed, for example. If it's off, the device is operating at 10 megabits per second. Green, 100 megabits per second. Or blinking green is 1000 megabits per second. And then we have a power over Ethernet port here. Power over Ethernet is, well, if it's off, there is no power over Ethernet. If it's green, there is a power over Ethernet. Amber, alternating green and amber, power of Ethernet is denied because it will exceed the switch power capacity. Or blinking amber, power over Ethernet is off because there is a fault. And then we have a mode button. Here we'll talk about how to do recovery later on. We look at the recovery if, for example, the switch, we lose the password, or maybe the operating system, there's a fault or something like that, we'll use the mode button. I'll do this in another chapter. In this, another lesson in this chapter, we look at how to recover from the password recovery. Thank you for watching lesson 1.1, basic switch configuration commands. This is of chapter 1, basic device configuration. Please have a look at my other videos and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. This has been Astrid Krasniqi. Bye bye.